What I want to do is I want to start and I want to just refer to and walk through the Bible, the beginning for us, and to see if it makes any difference in terms of where things come from and how they come and what we understand in that regard. And then next week I'm going to follow it up with, and I've called this or entitled this sermon, Creator. Because next week I'll follow up a world without a creator. Because we live in a world without a creator. You have to understand that. And does it make any difference? But today we're going to talk about a world with a creator. And we're going to begin here in Genesis chapter 1. Now, we're making some assumptions. We're beginning in Genesis, so we're beginning with this book that people know, people of the world, the billions of people, know as the Bible. It's a book that people put varying amounts of trust in. People use it for inspiration. They use it for some historical. They use it for tidbits, for facts, for trivia. Some people use it as a way of life, the way to live their life according to these things that are written here. Some people just believe it's a collection of books. And some people believe it's the inspired Word of God. We're going to approach it today as if it's the inspired Word of God. I put the if in there, and I want to throw that out for this particular group because I believe this particular group believes that this is the inspired Word of God, the instruction that God gives to us. So we're going to begin here in verse 1. Actually, we're not going to get out of the book of Genesis today at all. And we're not going to get out of the first two chapters. So you don't have to turn anywhere today. Let's start here in verse 1. This is written by Moses. It's written, 2,000, 4,000 years ago by Moses. He puts it, and this is what he says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, this is what Moses tells us, that God created the heavens and the earth. So, in our world today, how many people in our world today believe that this is God's revelation? And that's a good question for us to ask. That God created all of these things, the heavens, the earth, in essence, the whole universe. Now, we read earlier today, Mrs. Mack read what the Apostle Paul had to write about the creation from the book of Colossians in chapter 1 and the like, about what is said of Jesus being involved in that creation, the Son of God. So how many people believe that? Or is this merely a Hebrew understanding of what creation is all about, that God created? Is that all there is to it? Is it a distant happening without any present implications or even future implications? How does the fact that God created heaven and earth affect your life? Now, when I went out this morning, the moon was setting. It was full, big, gorgeous, absolutely like a harvest moon, but setting, and there was a big white cloud, and it was dark enough, but it had a hint of blue in it, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Now, for me personally, it affected my life. That is, not only did I say, this is beautiful, this is gorgeous, thanks for the light and the stars and all that, but for me personally, it's like, God, that's awesome. That's wonderful. In fact, I had to call Karen to the door and say, look at what is up in the heavens. And I'm thinking, God created this. He made it. And this is a beautiful sight to see. Now, that's how it affected me this morning, a part of what Moses writes here in the book of Genesis about God being the creator. Now, it's interesting enough that these are the very first words that are written in the Bible are about God and about creation, that He is the creator of all these things. Now, what we want to do is we want to kind of work our way through Genesis chapter 1, and let's see how involved that God is in the creation. And I think it's important that we might understand, because oftentimes in kind of the Newtonian theory, as far as God is concerned, God made the world like a watch, wound it up, and He's gone. He's, we're just left to ourselves, to our own devices and the like, and God is very, very distant. That is not part of my belief system. You know, as Paul said, in Him we live, we move, we have our being. I don't believe that God is distant as some people think. But again, it's about the Creator. And I think that we'll see in this that God was very involved from what we read in the book of Genesis in the creation. So here's what we see. In verse 3, God says, "Let there be light." That's an involvement. When you're giving permission, you're doing something when you say, "Let something be." In some of the philosophy, you know, I think, therefore I am. But let there be light. This is God's involvement. So He's telling us this is what we need to do, or I want to be done, have to happen. I want there to be light. And that's what He is creating. Verse 4, then we see, and God said, "Let the expanse," and verse 6, and God said, "Let there be light." There was light, and God saw. So not only is God saying, "Let something happen," but God sees it happening. God saw here that the light was, and then He makes it, according to God, according to this Creator, He let it happen. He saw it happen, and then He declared that it is good. Now, that is important because we live in a world where today people wonder what is good, what is bad. Is there such a thing as evil, etc., etc.? But we hear in this Creator that He let something happen, He saw it happen, and He declared that light was good. From the early on, from the onset, He declares that it is good. Then verse 7, God says, here in verse 7, so God made the expanse. Now, who made it? We're talking Creator. God made the expanse between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the expanse and separated them under the expanse, the water above, and so God called the expanse sky. So we find here God giving a name to something, kind of helping us to define things and to be able to understand, well, what is that? Well, that's sky, this expanse that you have here. But God made it. Then in verse 8, we find here, as we go, God called. Okay, this is again God naming. God called the expanse there, the sky. And then He talks about the morning. So then, in verse 9, we find something else about God's involvement. It says, let the water and the sky be gathered in one place. And so the ground appeared, and it was so. That's kind of like the I am. This actually happened then. It's a happening. It is so. It is done. It is finished. It's the job. That's the way it is. And there's a lesson. And all these things, we're going to come back and pick it up. If God says something is so, is it so? That's kind of a thing that we have to realize in our life, because we're not so sure that things are as they are. But God calls it so. It was so. Verse 14 then, going on with God here, what He tells us in the book of Genesis in verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day and night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons, days, and years. Now we find God's involvement in this creation. He's telling, now, I'm giving you a reason. So that we find a Creator has a reason for doing what He's doing. This is for this purpose. Otherwise, is there any purpose for it? Things that are done in the way in which they are done. But we find here in the book of Genesis that He's given it a sense of purpose. It is for this reason. For the days, the seasons, and He delineates that.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? We can help. Log on to worldwidechurchofgod.com or wcgfairfield.blogspot.com and stay connected to reality. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area. regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We believe Jesus Christ when he proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.